Ravi had trained in martial arts since the age of 10. His small village stood on the edge of the royal capital, where the golden towers of the palace rose high above the river. Every morning before sunrise, Ravi would run across the fields, his feet brushing against the dew-covered grass, and practice his moves until the first light touched the sky. He believed in patience and balance more than strength. The old master who had trained him always said that the mind was the strongest weapon. For many years, Ravi lived a quiet life. He helped his father in the rice fields and taught the local children how to protect themselves. People admired his calm nature and simple way of living, yet deep inside, Ravi carried a quiet dream. He wanted to prove that true skill did not belong only to the rich or those who trained inside the royal walls. He wanted to show that discipline could rise from the humblest of places. One morning, a royal messenger arrived in the village. He carried a scroll sealed with the king's golden mark. The news spread quickly. The king had announced a challenge that would take place in the royal courtyard. It was not a battle of anger, but a test of control and focus. Anyone from the kingdom could step forward to face the royal guards in friendly combat. The winner would receive honor from the king himself. The villagers gathered around as the messenger read the notice. Some laughed at the idea of a common man challenging the royal guards. Others whispered that no one had dared to face them in years. Ravi stood quietly among them, listening. When the messenger finished, a few brave souls spoke of joining, but most gave up as soon as they imagined the tall, trained guards of the palace. Ravi went home that evening with the sound of the river flowing behind his house. His mother was preparing rice, and the air smelled of wood smoke. She looked at him and saw the thought in his eyes even before he spoke. "You are thinking of the king's challenge," she said softly. Ravi nodded. She sighed and sat beside him. "Your heart is peaceful, my son. Do not let pride disturb that peace." "I do not wish to fight for pride," Ravi replied. "I only wish to show that calm can be stronger than anger." His father, who had been listening from the doorway, gave a small smile. "Then go," he said. "But remember, respect must stay with you even when you win." The next morning, Ravi packed a small bag and started walking toward the capital. The road was long and lined with tall banyan trees. He passed farmers working in the sun, children flying paper birds, and merchants calling out the prices of fruit. The smell of sweet bread and roasted corn followed him through the streets. As he entered the capital, Ravi felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The city was full of sound. Bells from the temple rang in the distance, and the market buzzed with people. He saw men in silk robes and women carrying baskets of flowers. Guards in shining armor stood at every gate, their spears reflecting the sunlight. When he reached the palace courtyard, a crowd had already gathered. Flags waved in the air, and the royal banners glowed red and gold. The marble floor of the courtyard gleamed like water. The king's guards stood in a line, their faces calm and unreadable. Among them was Darun, the leader of the royal guard, a tall man known for his discipline and strength. Ravi signed his name on the entry list. Many of the other participants looked at him curiously. His simple clothes and quiet manner made him stand out among the proud warriors who boasted about their skills. He found a place near the corner of the courtyard and sat down to meditate, ignoring the laughter of a few who doubted him. When the king arrived, the sound of drums filled the air. Everyone bowed deeply as he walked to his seat. He raised his hand for silence and spoke with a calm voice. "Today we do not seek victory through force. We seek grace, control, and courage. Let this be a test of spirit." One by one, the participants stepped forward to face the guards. Some showed strength but lacked patience. Others moved quickly but without focus. One by one, they were disarmed or gently pushed aside by the disciplined guards. The crowd cheered at every match, enjoying the show of skill and balance. Finally, Ravi's name was called. The crowd grew quiet as he walked to the center. He bowed to the king, then to the guard he was to face. To his surprise, it was Darun himself. The leader of the guard stood tall, his expression calm but confident. "You are brave to stand before me," Darun said. Ravi smiled politely. "I am honored to learn from this test." The king nodded, and the drums began again. Darun moved first, stepping forward with controlled power. Ravi kept his eyes on his opponent's chest, reading every movement carefully. He moved lightly, turning his body just enough to avoid each strike. The crowd watched in silence as the two men moved like reflections of each other, one strong and grounded, the other swift and balanced. The sun rose higher, and sweat glistened on their faces. Ravi's breathing remained steady, his movements calm and smooth. Every time Darun advanced, Ravi turned or blocked with perfect timing. It was not a fight of anger but a dance of control. The crowd could feel the respect between them. Then, in one quick moment, Darun swung his arm a little too wide. Ravi saw the small opening. His foot moved by instinct, fast but clean, and his heel touched Darun's face with a light but precise strike. The sound of it echoed through the courtyard. Darun stepped back, surprised, and the crowd gasped. For a second, time felt still. Ravi immediately bowed deeply to show respect, but the silence around him was heavy. The royal banners moved gently in the breeze, and even the king leaned forward, curious. No one had ever touched the royal guard leader before, not even in a friendly challenge. Darun lowered his weapon and gave a small nod. His eyes held no anger, only a look of respect. "You are skilled," he said quietly. Ravi bowed again and stepped back, his heart beating fast but steady. The king raised his hand and the crowd began to cheer. Some shouted Ravi's name, amazed by what they had seen. Others whispered that the young man from the village might be more than he appeared to be. The royal musicians began to play their flutes, filling the courtyard with soft music. Ravi stood there, surrounded by the sound of drums and cheers, feeling both proud and uncertain. He had not meant to strike the guard's face so clearly. He had only reacted from years of training. Still, he could not help but wonder what the king was thinking. As the cheers died down, the king's messenger approached Ravi and said, "His Majesty wishes to speak with you inside." The messenger's voice was polite but firm. Ravi followed him through the great stone doors, his heart calm but curious. He did not know that the true challenge was yet to come, and that this single moment of precision would change the path of his life forever. Ravi followed the royal messenger through the long corridors of the palace. The walls were high and decorated with golden carvings of past kings and brave warriors. Every step he took echoed softly across the marble floor. Servants moved quietly around him, carrying trays of flowers and scrolls. The air smelled of sandalwood and jasmine. Ravi had never been inside a place so grand. Yet, despite the beauty around him, his heart was calm. He reminded himself of his master's words, "That peace must be stronger than pride." The messenger stopped before a large wooden door and turned toward Ravi. "You will speak only when His Majesty allows it," he said. Ravi nodded with respect. The door opened slowly, revealing a hall filled with light from tall windows. The king sat upon a seat made of carved wood and shining stones. His robe was simple yet full of dignity, and his eyes were steady and kind. Guards stood at both sides of the room watching in silence. Ravi stepped forward and bowed deeply. The king raised his hand for him to rise. "You are the one who faced Darun," the king said in a calm voice. "You fought with skill and respect. Tell me your name and where you come from." "My name is Ravi, Your Majesty," he replied. "I come from a small village near the river. I was trained by my old master, who believed that control of the mind is the first rule of strength." The king leaned forward slightly, his eyes studying Ravi with curiosity. "When you struck my royal guard, what did you feel in that moment?" he asked. Ravi thought for a short time before answering. "I felt the flow of movement, nothing more. It was not pride or anger. It was the result of training and timing." A faint smile appeared on the king's face. "That is an answer of balance," he said. "Most men who stand in the courtyard seek glory. You seem to seek something different. Tell me, Ravi, what do you wish to find through all your years of training?" Ravi spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "I wish to understand peace, Your Majesty. Many think strength comes from the hand or from power. I believe true strength comes when the heart stays calm, even in struggle." The king nodded and rested his hands on his knees. "Then you have already passed the first test," he said. "But there is another test that waits for those who walk the path of true discipline. Only a few have taken it, and fewer still have returned unchanged. Will you accept it?" Ravi felt no fear. He bowed again. "If it will bring me closer to understanding, I accept." The king looked at his guards and gave a signal. One of them brought forward a small wooden box. Inside it was a simple key made of silver. "This key opens the gate to the Temple of Balance," the king explained. "It lies beyond the inner garden. No one may enter unless chosen. You will go there and stay until sunrise. If you return with your mind clear and heart steady, you will have earned not only my respect, but also your place among those who guard peace in this land." Ravi took the key with both hands and bowed once more. The king's expression softened. "Do not think this is a test of strength," he said. "It is a test of truth. What you face inside will depend on what lives within you." 2 guards escorted Ravi through another hallway that led to the royal garden. The path was lined with white flowers, and the sound of water flowed from a nearby fountain. The sky had begun to turn orange as the sun slowly sank behind the palace towers. They reached a stone gate at the far end of the garden. It was covered in vines and looked ancient. The guards stopped there and stepped aside. "This is where we leave you," one of them said. "The gate opens only with the king's key. Whatever happens inside is for your eyes alone." Ravi nodded. He placed the key in the lock and the gate opened with a soft sound. He stepped through and the gate closed quietly behind him. Inside was a narrow path that led through a small forest. The air was cool and the smell of fresh earth filled his lungs. Birds rested on branches and the leaves shimmered in the soft light of evening. Ravi walked slowly, his footsteps silent on the stone path. The world seemed peaceful, yet something in the air felt different. As he walked farther, the path opened into a wide courtyard surrounded by tall pillars. In the center stood a pond so clear that it reflected the sky like a mirror. Around it were wooden statues of old masters in calm meditation. Ravi bowed to them and sat down near the pond. For a while he closed his eyes and focused on his breathing. The air felt still and time seemed to fade away. Then softly a voice spoke. It was not loud, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Why have you come here, child of balance?" the voice said. Ravi opened his eyes, looking around, but saw no one. "I have come to learn," he answered. "I seek to understand peace," the voice replied. "Peace is not learned. It is remembered. Look into the water and you will see what you truly carry inside." Ravi leaned forward and gazed into the pond. At first he saw only his reflection. Then slowly the image began to change. He saw himself as a child running through the fields. He saw his old master teaching him how to focus, how to move with the wind instead of against it. He saw the faces of people he had helped in his village. But then he saw moments of doubt, the times he had felt small, when others had mocked his simple clothes and quiet ways. He realized that though his hands were steady, a small part of his heart still carried the wish to prove himself. That wish, though not wrong, was a chain that held him from true peace. The voice spoke again. "To guard peace, you must let go of the need to be seen as strong. Strength that seeks attention is still weakness." Ravi closed his eyes again and took a deep breath. He let the thought pass through him like wind through trees. When he opened his eyes once more, the water was calm again and his reflection was clear. The doubt inside him had faded. Night fell slowly and the courtyard filled with the silver light of the moon. Ravi stayed by the pond, meditating. The sound of insects sang in the background and the stars shone above like tiny fires. Time passed quietly until the first light of dawn touched the pillars. When Ravi rose, the air felt lighter. He walked back toward the gate, his steps silent but sure. The gate opened easily as he approached, though he had not touched it. As he stepped outside, the guards who waited there looked surprised. One of them said, "No one has returned before sunrise so calm." Ravi simply smiled. "The night taught me more than I expected." They led him back to the palace where the king awaited. The royal courtyard was quiet now, with only the morning breeze moving the flags. The king stood near the steps looking at him with interest. "You have passed through the temple," the king said. "Tell me, what did you find there?" Ravi bowed and replied, "I found myself, Your Majesty. I learned that peace is not something we gain. It is something we uncover when we stop trying to prove who we are." The king's face lit with approval. "You have spoken the truth. A man who understands that is stronger than any sword. From today, you shall stay within the palace to learn the ways of the inner guard. There is more to your journey than you yet see." Ravi bowed deeply, his heart steady. He had entered the palace to test his skill, but now he understood that the real test was within the soul. He felt grateful, humble, and ready to serve. As he walked toward the inner courtyard, the sun rose fully above the palace walls. The golden light spread across the stones, and for a moment everything looked peaceful. Ravi's journey had only begun, but already his spirit had grown beyond what training alone could give. He carried within him not just skill, but wisdom, and that made all the difference. The first morning of Ravi's new life in the palace began before sunrise. The courtyard was still and quiet. A thin mist floated above the stone path, and the sound of temple bells came softly from the city beyond the palace walls. Ravi stood in the center of the training ground, breathing slowly, his body relaxed and his mind calm. He had been given a simple white robe to wear and a wooden staff as his training weapon. Around him were 6 other guards, each chosen by the king for their skill and honesty. They were known as the Inner Circle, and they protected not only the king's life but also the peace of the entire palace. The leader of the group was Darun, the same royal guard whom Ravi had faced in the courtyard. His face carried no anger now, only quiet respect. When he stepped forward, the others bowed to him. Ravi did the same. Darun spoke in a steady voice. "Ravi, from today you are part of the Inner Circle. You have shown control and discipline, but here, you will learn something deeper. In this palace, strength is not for power. It is for harmony. You will train with us and live among us not as a fighter, but as a guardian of balance." Ravi nodded. "I am ready to learn." The training began soon after. The Inner Circle practiced together in silence. Every move was smooth, every breath measured. They moved as if they were one body, each step in rhythm with the others. Darun watched Ravi carefully. He saw how calm and focused the young man was, yet how quickly he learned. Ravi's movements were not forced. They flowed naturally, like water finding its path. After the morning training, the group sat near the garden fountain to rest. The sound of the water filled the air. One of the guards, a cheerful man named Milan, turned to Ravi and asked, "You move like someone who has trained all his life." "Who taught you?" Ravi smiled lightly. "My master taught me to listen to the wind and to follow the rhythm of my heart. He said a warrior who fights with noise forgets the sound of peace." Milan laughed softly. "Your master must have been a wise man. Most people I know listen only to the sound of victory." Darun, who sat nearby, looked at Ravi. "Perhaps that is why the king chose him," he said. "The palace needs peace more than it needs heroes." Later that day, Ravi was assigned to assist in the palace library. It was not a punishment, but a tradition. Every new guard of the Inner Circle spent time among the old scrolls to learn the history of the kingdom. The library was vast, filled with the scent of paper and ink. Rows of lamps burned softly, lighting shelves that seemed endless. The keeper of the library was an elderly man named Surin. His eyes were weak, but his memory was sharp. When Ravi entered, Surin greeted him with a warm smile. "So you are the new guardian everyone talks about. Welcome. Here, strength means nothing. Only patience will help you," Ravi bowed. "I am honored to learn." Surin handed him an old scroll. "This one tells the story of the first guardian," he said. "Read it and tell me what you learned from it." Ravi sat by the window and opened the scroll carefully. The story was simple but deep. It told of a man who once saved the kingdom not by fighting, but by preventing a war through calm words. The man had listened when others shouted. He had waited when others rushed. His silence had brought peace where swords could not. When Ravi finished reading, Surin asked, "What did you find in his story?" Ravi thought for a moment and answered, "He was strong because he understood others, not because he defeated them." The old librarian smiled. "That is the lesson of the Inner Circle. Remember it well. A true guardian does not stand above others. He stands with them." Days turned into weeks and Ravi's routine grew steady. Every morning began with training, every afternoon with study, and every evening with meditation in the garden. The palace had a rhythm of peace, yet beneath that peace Ravi could sense something unspoken. One evening, while walking near the outer wall, Ravi saw 2 young guards arguing. Their voices were raised and their hands shook with frustration. He approached them quietly. "What troubles you?" he asked. One of them, named Saran, said, "The royal store records are missing. The captain will think we were careless." Ravi asked calmly, "When did you last see them?" The other guard replied, "Before the evening bell. We placed them on the table near the fountain and now they are gone." Ravi looked around. The area was quiet except for a light breeze that moved the leaves. He walked toward the fountain and noticed a small feather stuck between the stones. It was from a messenger bird. He looked up and saw the tower nearby where birds carried letters from the palace to other lands. The records were likely taken by mistake, Ravi said. Perhaps a messenger confused them with a letter. The guards looked relieved. "Should we tell the captain?" Saran asked. "Not yet," Ravi replied. "First we will look. Worry grows faster than truth." Together they went to the tower. There they found a young messenger cleaning the cages. When Ravi asked about the feather, the boy's face turned pale. "I took a stack of papers from near the fountain. I thought they were letters ready to send," Ravi smiled gently. Then let us return them before trouble spreads. The boy quickly fetched the papers and gave them to Ravi, bowing deeply in apology. Ravi returned them to the guards, who felt both grateful and embarrassed. You saved us, one said. Ravi shook his head. No, I only listened and looked. Most problems are born from haste, not harm. The story of how Ravi handled the matter spread quietly among the guards. The king heard of it too. He did not summon Ravi, but he smiled when Darun told him. The boy learns fast, the king said. He listens to silence, and silence never lies. Weeks later, the king called for a ceremony to honor those who served faithfully. The courtyard was decorated with flags and music filled the air. As Ravi stood among the guards, the king spoke to the crowd. In every generation, a guardian rises not through victory, but through wisdom. Today I see such a spirit among us. He turned his gaze toward Ravi. You have walked the path of balance with humility. From this day you will not only guard this palace, but also teach the young ones who come after you. Ravi felt humbled. He bowed deeply and said, Your Majesty, I will serve with all my heart. That night, when the courtyard grew quiet, Ravi sat by the same pond where he had once looked into his reflection. The moon shone on the water, calm and bright. He thought about everything that had happened, the challenge, the temple, the lessons, and the people he had met. He realized that peace was not something found in stillness alone. It lived in actions that built understanding, in words that carried kindness, and in hearts that stayed open even when tested. Darun joined him by the pond. You remind me of how I once was when I joined the guards, Darun said. But I lost my calm with time. You brought it back to me, Ravi smiled. Then we both have learned from each other. Darun looked at the sky and said, There is a reason the king brought you here, Ravi. The balance of this palace is not only about swords and shields. There are deeper things at work, things that you may soon see. Ravi listened quietly. The wind moved across the water, carrying the scent of night flowers. He did not know what Darun meant, but he trusted that the path ahead would reveal it in time. As the night deepened, Ravi closed his eyes for a moment. The stars above seemed to glow brighter, and the sound of the fountain was like a soft heartbeat in the distance. He felt at peace not because his journey was over, but because he had begun to walk with purpose. The next few days in the palace passed quietly, yet Ravi noticed small changes. The guards moved with more alertness, and the king's advisors whispered among themselves more often than before. There was a quiet tension in the air that had not been there earlier. The peace of the palace felt thin, like calm water hiding a current beneath. One evening, after the final round of training, Darun called Ravi aside. The moon had risen over the palace walls, and the courtyard was silver with light. Darun's voice was low but steady. Ravi, what I told you by the pond was not only a warning. There is something you must know. The balance of this palace does not depend only on swords or discipline. It depends on trust, and trust is beginning to break. Ravi looked at him with calm eyes. What is happening, Master Darun? Darun sighed softly. Someone has been sending false messages from within the palace. The king's seal was copied, and letters with his name have reached the outer villages. They contain wrong orders about taxes and trade. The people are beginning to question the king's fairness. If this continues, the peace he has built will be shaken. Ravi understood the seriousness of the matter. Do we know who is behind it? Not yet, Darun said. The king has asked us to find the truth quietly. If word spreads that someone inside the palace is betraying him, it will cause panic. We must work in silence. That night, Ravi could not sleep. He sat by the window of his small room and watched the moonlight fall on the garden. He thought about the lessons he had learned, the temple, the pond, and the scrolls in the library. He knew that calm thinking would help him more than suspicion, so he began to observe. In the days that followed, Ravi spent more time in the library and in the storage halls, where records and letters were kept. He watched the scribes who wrote, the king's orders, the servants who carried messages, and the guards who guarded the gates. Everyone looked loyal, yet Ravi felt that somewhere among them, one heart carried fear or greed strong enough to break peace. One afternoon, while reading old records with Suren, the librarian, Ravi noticed something unusual. A stack of blank Scrolls had a faint mark on their edges, a symbol that looked like a small leaf. It was so light that most people would not notice it. When he touched it, he felt a rough texture, different from the smooth paper used in the palace. "Where do these scrolls come from?" Ravi asked. Surin adjusted his glasses and said, "These were brought by a merchant from the southern markets. They are new and not yet used." "Why do you ask?" Ravi looked at the leaf mark again. "I saw this same mark on the paper used for the royal letters sent last week." Surin looked surprised. "But those letters are made by the palace scribes. None of this new paper should be used until approved." Ravi bowed politely. "Thank you, Master Surin. You have helped me more than you know." That evening, Ravi went to Darun and told him about the paper. Darun listened carefully and said, "The southern market paper is rare. Only the merchants who deal directly with the palace can bring it. That means the trader is not an outsider. It is someone who has access to both the merchants and the royal seals." They decided to watch the supply gate the next morning when the merchants arrived. When the sun rose, the palace was already busy. Carts filled with spices, cloth, and paper entered through the large wooden gates. Ravi stood near the gate, pretending to inspect one of the wagons. He noticed a man with a calm face and quiet steps handing a small packet to one of the palace scribes. The scribe looked around nervously before hiding the packet under his robe. Ravi walked closer. His voice was polite, but his eyes were sharp. "Friend, what is that packet you carry?" The scribe's face went pale. "It is nothing important, just notes for the records." Darun, who had been watching from a distance, came forward. "Show us," he said. The man hesitated, then slowly pulled out the packet. Inside were thin sheets of paper with the same leaf mark and a small wooden seal carved to match the king's. It was clear now. Someone had been using this to create false letters. The scribe trembled. "I swear I did not mean harm," he said. "A man promised me gold if I copied a few letters. I never thought it would cause trouble." Darun spoke calmly. "Who gave you the order?" The scribe lowered his eyes. "A royal advisor named Ratan. He said it was part of the king's secret plan to test loyalty. I did not question him." Darun and Ravi exchanged a glance. They both knew Ratan. He was clever and charming, trusted by many in the court. The king often spoke with him about matters of trade and law. It was hard to believe, yet the evidence was clear. That evening, Darun met with the king privately and told him everything. The king listened without anger. He only said, "Bring me Ratan tomorrow morning, but let no one else know." Ravi spent the night in quiet thought. He wondered why a man like Ratan, who already held power, would risk the peace of the kingdom. He decided to watch him one more time before the meeting. Just before dawn, Ravi walked near the advisor's quarters. The halls were dark, and only the torches burned softly on the walls. He saw Ratan leaving his room, holding a rolled letter in his hand. Ratan looked cautious, glancing both ways before moving toward the garden gate. Ravi followed at a distance, moving silently across the path. Ratan stopped near the fountain where a small bird cage was placed. He tied the letter to the leg of a bird and released it into the sky. Ravi stepped forward and said, "That bird will not carry peace today." Ratan turned sharply, his eyes wide with surprise. "You again? The king's new guardian." "The king trusted you," Ravi said calmly. "Why send false orders?" Ratan's face tightened. "Because peace makes men lazy. The king's rule has grown soft. The people need to fear their ruler again. I only wish to remind them of strength." Ravi shook his head. "Fear does not bring strength. It breaks hearts and turns faith into doubt." At that moment, Darun arrived with 2 guards. They had followed Ravi's trail after he left his room. Ratan looked around, realizing there was no escape. He did not fight. He only lowered his head as Darun ordered the guards to take him away. Later that morning, Ratan was brought before the king. Ravi and Darun stood beside the throne as witnesses. The king listened in silence while Ratan spoke. He did not raise his voice, nor did he show anger. When Ratan finished, the king said, "You served me for many years. I trusted your wisdom, but you let pride turn into blindness. You forgot that peace is not weakness. It is the strength that holds us together." The king ordered that Ratan be sent away from the palace to live in the far eastern monastery, where he could spend his days in reflection. It was a punishment that carried no cruelty, only time to learn. After the hearing, the king turned to Ravi. "You saw truth where others saw nothing. You used patience instead of force. This is why I chose you." Ravi bowed deeply. "I only followed the path you set, Your Majesty." Darun placed a hand on Ravi's shoulder. "You have done more than any soldier could. You have protected not only the king but also the heart of the kingdom." That night the palace was peaceful again. The lights glowed softly, and music from the royal hall drifted through the air. Ravi walked to the same pond where his journey had begun. The water was still, and his reflection looked calm. He realized that every lesson, every challenge, had led to this moment. He understood now that being a guardian was not about fighting enemies. It was about guarding truth and guiding others toward peace. The king's words echoed in his heart, and he promised himself that he would never forget the balance he had found. As the night wind passed through the garden, Ravi felt the quiet strength of the palace return. The stars above were bright, and the sound of the fountain filled the air with calm. The kingdom rested once more in peace, and so did his heart. After the incident with Ratan, peace returned to the palace. The days grew calm again, and the king's trust in the inner circle became stronger than ever. The people in the kingdom heard about the event, though not in full detail. They only knew that the king's guardians had protected truth and saved the land from confusion. Ravi continued his daily training with the same discipline as before. Yet something inside him had changed. He felt a deeper stillness, a sense that his purpose was no longer to prove himself but to serve the peace he had helped protect. Every morning he would rise before the sun, stand in the courtyard, and let the first rays of light touch his face. He had found calm not in silence alone, but in action guided by wisdom. One morning, while the dew still clung to the grass, the king sent for Ravi. A messenger led him through the familiar corridors to the grand hall. The king sat near the window, watching the birds that flew across the sky. He turned as Ravi entered and smiled warmly. "Come, Ravi," he said. "You have served the palace well. Your calm heart has restored balance. I have something to show you." The king led him through a side passage that Ravi had never seen before. They walked down a stairway that spiraled into the heart of the palace. The air grew cooler, and the sound of water echoed through the stone walls. At the end of the passage, they reached a large door made of bronze. The king took out a key and opened it. Behind the door was a small temple. The walls were plain, and the floor was made of polished stone. In the center stood a single candle that burned with a gentle golden flame. The light filled the room with warmth. "This is the Temple of Balance," the king said softly. "It was built by the first guardian of this land. Only a few know of its existence. Every ruler must visit this place when he feels the weight of his crown. It reminds us that peace begins within." Ravi bowed his head. "It is a place of great calm, Your Majesty." The king nodded. "It is, and now I wish to pass its guardianship to you. From this day you will watch over this temple and teach others the meaning of balance. You will not serve as a soldier but as a teacher and guide. Do you accept this duty?" Ravi felt a deep emotion rise in his chest. "I accept with gratitude and humility," he said. The king placed his hand on Ravi's shoulder. "Then let this temple be your home and your heart. Remember, power fades, wealth passes, but balance keeps the world standing." From that day forward, Ravi lived within the temple. His duties were not of battle but of guidance. Each day he met young guards and palace servants who came to him for advice. Some came with questions about strength, others about patience, and a few simply to sit in silence near the candle's light. Ravi welcomed them all. He taught them that balance did not mean standing still. It meant knowing when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen. He told them that every person carried both calm and storm within, and the true art of life was to keep them in harmony. Over time, people began to speak of Ravi not only as a skilled warrior but as a man of deep understanding. Visitors from nearby villages and towns came to hear his words. Even the children of the city, who once played noisily near the palace walls, began to visit the temple to listen to his gentle lessons. One day, as Ravi was teaching a group of young trainees, Darun entered the temple. His face carried the lines of age, but his spirit remained strong. The two men greeted each other with warmth. "Ravi," Darun said with a kind smile, "I have come to say that I will soon leave the palace. My years of service are ending. The king has asked me to retire to the mountains where the air is clean and the rivers sing. I wanted to see you before I go." Ravi bowed respectfully. "Your guidance has been my path, Master Darun. Without your wisdom, I would not have found mine." Darun laughed softly. "Perhaps wisdom is not found but shared. You took the path that I once feared to take. You turned discipline into peace. The palace is lucky to have you." They sat together for a long time, speaking of old days of training and of lessons learned through silence. Before he left, Darun looked once more at the glowing candle in the center of the temple. "Keep this flame alive," he said. "As long as it burns, balance will live in this kingdom." After Darun's departure, Ravi continued his work with quiet dedication. He wrote scrolls about discipline and harmony, which were later kept in the palace library. His words were simple, written in a way that anyone could understand. He believed that peace should not belong only to the wise, but to everyone who sought it with an honest heart. As the years passed, the kingdom flourished. Trade grew, people lived without fear, and the king's rule became known as the Age of Harmony. Travelers who came from distant lands often spoke of the temple that stood within the royal grounds, where a calm man taught lessons of the heart instead of war. One evening, the king himself came to visit Ravi again. His hair had turned gray, but his eyes were still filled with kindness. He walked slowly into the temple, where Ravi sat in meditation beside the candle. "My old friend," the king said with a gentle smile. "It has been many years since we met here. The world outside is loud again. Kingdoms rise and fall, but this place remains still. I sometimes wonder how you have kept it so peaceful." Ravi opened his eyes and smiled. "Because the flame burns not from oil, but from understanding. As long as people come here to learn, peace will stay alive." The king looked at the candle and nodded. "You have done more for this land than any soldier or minister. You have taught peace to hearts that might never have known it. When I'm gone, I wish this temple to remain open for all, not just for the palace. Promise me you will guide anyone who comes, no matter who they are." "I promise." "Your Majesty," Ravi said. The king placed his hand over Ravi's and said, "Then the kingdom will never fall, for as long as one heart remembers balance, the light will never fade." When the king left, Ravi looked at the candle again. The flame swayed gently in the soft air. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the quiet village near the river to the palace, from a young fighter seeking purpose to a guardian of peace. Every step had been a lesson. Every challenge had shaped his spirit. The next morning, a new dawn painted the sky with shades of gold and rose. The palace bells rang softly in the distance, and the garden outside the temple bloomed with new flowers. Ravi stepped outside and watched the world wake. The air was cool, and the light touched everything with calm beauty. He knew that his time in this world was part of a greater circle. Someday another would come to take his place, just as he had followed the path of those before him. But until that day, he would keep teaching, keep guiding, and keep the flame alive. As the sun rose higher, the first group of students arrived at the temple gate. Among them were children, young guards, and even merchants from the town. They bowed to Ravi, who greeted them with a smile. "Today we will learn about stillness," he said. "Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the moment when your heart moves with the rhythm of truth." The students listened as he spoke, their eyes calm and focused, the temple filled with the soft sound of his words and the gentle whisper of the wind. And so, the story of Ravi, the man who once stepped into the royal courtyard as a simple villager, became the story of the guardian of balance. His name lived not through battles or fame, but through the peace he gave to others. The candle in the temple continued to burn, its flame bright and steady, a symbol of the calm that never faded. Under its light, the kingdom remained at peace, and the spirit of balance endured for generations.